Shalom Rabbi Sai, this is Yehud 11. The program is 11 at 11, heard each and every Thursday evening between 11 and midnight. If you have a head for the internet, which everybody has now because of our Goddess Isreal, it's a Torah Chadasha. Revel Yisrael is not here anymore. We deal with the internet, right? My channel is 11, Levin, the numeral 11 on YouTube, where we archive our programs each and every week. I'm your humble host, Yehuda 11, formerly of the Fear Kashis, the questions that people fear to ask and fear to answer. I do both. We renamed the program 11 at 11 because we're at the 11th hour now. And I have 98% of my brain tied behind my back and the backs of Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Muncie, Williamsburg, Lakewood, and far too many Rabbonim, just to make the Hashkafa of the Gedolim of yesteryear, which used to be Hashkafa 101 to 303, understandable to the Tzibur. We have a very, very interesting program. I started off with a 25-minute shir. That shir is also YouTubed. I did that in 2016, the Summer Misporim. It's called Power Davening. Hopefully you've heard it. And it's an inspirational shir on how to cry by davening and how to connect to Hashem. Don't get the wrong idea, Rabbi Sai. The Chazal tell us, Kavi el Hashem, Chazak v'yamis libech v'kavi el Hashem. You daven to Hashem, you hope to Him, you're not answered, you try again and again. The Chazal say also that one of the things that constantly needs chizuk is tefillah. So although it might sound very impressive, the shir that you heard from me, and Baruch Hashem, over my lifetime, I've been able to employ sometimes the methodologies which I discussed, which I discovered, and later found to be in the Sefer Hasidim and in Sfarim, and they're very helpful in davening. I don't want anybody to get the impression that you could just turn it on and off like a spigot. The Yetzer Hara is mischazik on the person every day, and tefillah is something that needs constant chizuk. And I want to say that Kavi el Hashem, Chazak v'yam sivech v'kavi el Hashem, is not only about being answered in tefillah, but in terms of davening, Kavi el Hashem, you daven, and your mind is wandering. Chazak v'yam sivech v'kavi el Hashem, weiter. A few minutes later, your mind is davening, your mind is floating. That's the Satan, that's Yetzer Hara. And you should use methodologies of zmiras, of songs that touch the soul, and personalizing, thinking of your wife, your husband, your children, your parents, Klal Yisrael, Rabbonim, whatever it takes according to the prayer you're doing to make it effective. There's a famous mashal that Rosh Shalom Shadron gives, that he was in the marketplace in what is that called? Not Ben Yehuda, Machne Yehuda. He was picking ripe tomatoes, squeezing the tomatoes to see if they were ripe. And all of a sudden, he feels somebody coming over and buchaving him, that's zetzing him, he's hitting him in his chest. So he can't understand who's attacked me in the chest. He looks around and suddenly he realizes he was by rote reciting Salach Lo Novidu Chotanu. He was hitting himself in the chest, but his mind was on picking tomatoes in Machne Yehuda. By the way, the halach in the Shulchan Aruch is that the first bracha until you have to Magen Avraham, la halach l'maisa, you have to have kavanah. If you don't have kavanah, you have to start over again and say the bracha. Rav Moshe says that we don't do that anymore. That's what I think I heard, that we don't do that because who says the second time is going to be any better? But I think either I might have heard him say, or he said to somebody, or I heard that he said that Rav Shishgal, his Edom, Zitzal, that Rav Shishgal, if he would not have kavanah in the first bracha, he could follow the Shulchan Aruch and go, because the Chazak he'll have kavanah. There's another interesting anecdote. They came to Rosh Shlomo Zalman to ask him, like, what do you do about the first bracha, about kavanah? He says, who could have kavanah for the first bracha? Who can maintain attention for the first bracha? Now, that's not to say that we don't have, we're not capable of making of intentions, but we shouldn't be secure. We shouldn't take it for granted. We should understand that even we hear from Gedolei Yisrael that they acknowledge this problem. Tefillah is unbelievable. Tefillah is the greatest shortcut. Like I've often said, a person to be a gadol in learning, hasmada, it's echad elef nichnas, 1,000 people go into the base medrash. Echad yaitzel leiro, one of them comes out of Gadol Yisrael. If even chesed, to be one of these people day and night can be called upon. Haskanim bali chasadim mikam cho Yisrael, as they say. Not everybody can do this kind of chesed, to have 20 people sitting at their house every Shabbos, the women, the men, to prepare, to do, to but there's one area, Rabbi Sai, where the simplest person amongst us can be a gadol. And that area is in tefillah. In tefillah, we could all rise to the head of the class. We are davening, our connection with Hashem, our shifri kamayim libech, can be gedolim. And now we're in the very final days of the 3 weeks, where the melech is besada, the king is on the road, shrinta begalusa, and as the Swarm say, it's easier to connect with the king when he's on the road. And therefore, we should use these tips, and we should use this time to be we should use these times effectively to enhance our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu through davening. I apologize for the interruptions. We have a very, very chashuva program today. We're going to have a guest. We're going to call him Poloni Almaini. But he opened my eyes last night. I spoke to him for an hour and a half. And he opened my eyes into what's going on in Eretz Yisrael. The proactive de-Haredization program that is being visited upon our Achenu B'nai Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael by the Israeli government and by many quislings, many collaborators. Hello? I have to once again apologize for all the interruptions. But this is going to be a very, very exciting program. You should excuse me. But as I mentioned many times before, I do this program technologically challenged, and I do this with a bit of Mesiras Nefesh, a bit of Machol Mo'idecha, because Mo'idecha means with all your abilities, and it means, of course, with all your money. And I have a paucity of both, a shortage of abilities, as you see, technologically and in other ways, and I certainly have a shortage of money. And once again, I appeal to people to go to the Chesed Fund. And to find morality, Kiddush Hashem, our appeal, and to please to contribute Echad Hamaveh ve'Echad Hamamet, to share with me in this tremendous Kiddush Hashem, so that I should be able to continue the struggle. It's called the Kiddush Hashem Morality Fund, and it's called the Kiddush Hashem Morality Fund, and it's 8055 is the number. Last week, I was very critical of the Jewish press because they had this article from this, I call him a Eisvarf, a Balkishrin, a law professor, and a scholar, a Torah scholar by the name of Michael Broidy. But he's a left-winger, and he was speaking about this Equality Act. And he was saying that the Equality Act is a good thing, and he was criticizing Rabbi Avi Goldstein, who's a writer at Ben Torah Talmud Chacham. Rabbi Avi Goldstein is the same one who wrote into the Jewish press last year and uncovered to the Olam that the OU was giving a hechsher on an ice cream called gay ice cream. So Avi Goldstein is often on target, and he wrote in against this Equality Act, which is tremendously dangerous. So, of course, the liberal Michael Broidy, course, the liberal Michael Brody, of course, wrote an article in which he said, dealing with that baker that won the case in the Supreme Court, that he had the chutzpah not to want to make Jack Phillips, the religious Gentile, that he didn't want to make a cake for the homosexual couple. It's discrimination, it's this and that, and it's better for Yidden, because if not, we're going to have problems. So this bill is for us. It's going to advance the Mishkav Zachar agenda. No. Now, I maintained that the Jewish press, respectfully, that does so much good, which we highlight, and I'm going to even highlight this week, had no business even publishing something like this. In other words, the New York Times, officially, they publish op-ed pieces, they give both sides of the story. After I ran for mayor in 85, the New York Times in 86, early 86, covered the hearings on the Mishkav Zachar rights bill, which ultimately passed, because Koch made a deal, and it passed in the city council. But since I had made this the centerpiece of my mayoral campaign against Koch, so they recognized me as a leader in that area, and they were, quote unquote, bechaved me to write an op-ed piece against the Mishkav Zachar Act in the city council. And Cardinal O'Connor sent me a letter, thank you for accurately explaining our concerns on this bill. This is the Kiddush Hashem, that the Jewish people should be v'mizak, the tail that wags the dog. But now the New York Times will not have people doing this, writing both sides. You can never put in something against Mishkav Zachar marriage or against abortion. The New York Times won't have the conservative viewpoint. But the Jewish press, for some strange reason, chose to put in this article by Brody. But I was very happy to see that this week in the Jewish press, there were 3 prominent letters to the editor, one of them from Rabbi Goldstein, which dealt with Brody's terrible, fallacious points. Quote, to Rabbi Brody, this refusal is equivalent to declining to service a black American simply because of his skin color. In other words, declining to make a chasna or bake a cake for Mishkav Zachar family, for Mishkav Zachar couple, is somehow discrimination. In truth, there is no equivalence. In the latter instance, the baker is guided by prejudicial feelings against the blacks because of his race. That's discrimination. But Phillips had no objection to selling a generic wedding cake to the 2 men. Phillips' objection was to bake a unique cake that would give his imprimatur to same gender ceremonies. Rabbi Brody asks if I would object if a hotel owned by the Aryan National Church declined to host a Jewish wedding. Let's make that example more realistic. Say that a Muslim hotel owner refuses to host a wedding between a Muslim woman and a Christian man citing religious grounds. I believe the hotel owner would be well within his rights. Regarding the Equality Act's true agenda, Rabbi Brody ignores the insidious undercurrent guiding the LGBT movement. It seeks to make all kinds of intimacy pairings equally valid, not only in law, but in moral terms. It desires to commandeer the educational system and teach our children that all forms of intimacy are, quote unquote, natural. They're all equivalent. It further wishes to cast those who oppose this agenda as haters. If fully adapted, the equality law would thrust a dagger into the heart of the moral underpinnings of our society. While we rightly separate religion and state, our founding fathers inserted several references to God. Actually, there were 7 in the Declaration of Independence. I think there's 7. The framers recognized that a society devoid of a moral bedrock cannot long endure. From Rabbi Avi Goldstein, Farakwe Yeshikoyach. Okay, there are 2 other fantastic letters there. And then I want to say that there's another great letter to the editor in the Jewish press, which I would like to bring to the attention of the Olam. And I want to read it because it says so much. Rabbi Avram Sharabi of Lakewood, New Jersey writes, I read with interest Rabbi Reisman's article on the New York political establishment going after yeshivas. New York's legislature has also given much recognition to the LGBT Americans. Many think those 2 issues have nothing to do with each other, but I believe they do. I would like to add another supposedly unrelated issue. The new real estate laws in New York, which make it impossible to raise rents on 1 million rent-regulated apartments in the city. Many in the real estate industry were put out of business overnight due to these laws. These three are not unrelated. They are intertwined. When trends shift liberal, the effects are felt across the board. In the last 15 years, the Jewish vote has helped advance the liberal agenda. Sometimes Jews voted for left-wing candidates for short-term monetary pain, and sometimes they did so to find favor in the eyes of the political establishment. Either way, we do not fight for moral values because who cares what the Gentiles do? Let them be. Now this attitude, in other words, we don't fight, let them do, it doesn't have to do with us. Now this attitude is coming to bite us. LGBT propaganda is in our faces. Our children's education is being taken out of our hands, and the livelihood of many Jews has been destroyed. All three are the result of a very liberal political environment. Many of us wanted to believe we would work with progressives on justice, democracy, and private ownership while disagreeing with them on abortion, assisted suicide, and the definition of marriage. As liberals say, live and let live. They would let us run our own schools and practice our religion, even if it clashed with liberal postmodern morality. This tragedy, though, has proven to be a failure. Extreme tolerance breeds the likes of Ilan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. Good morals and good values go hand in hand. Rabbi Avram Sharabi, Givaldik Rabbi Sai, Imamish puts into a succinct nutshell what we've been timing on this chat, on this program, and on our chats. By the way, you can join in our chatosphere and get a lot of information by WhatsApping me at 718-469-6999. In this week's Jewish Press, you don't find this in Hamadia, you don't find it in Yated, you don't find it in Mishpacha, that was condemned by the Devorim of Eretz Yisrael years ago. But in the Jewish Press on page 68, in the weekly column Dispatch from the Culture Front by Benjamin Feinberg, New York City issues new gender guidelines. The New York City Department of Education recently issued guidelines for supporting transgender and gender-expansive students. Okay, we're going to go to our guest. Hello?
Yes, hello.
Okay, Tzaddik, we're going to go to our special guest. We're going to call him Ploni Almoni. And I was explaining briefly and introducing what we're going to be talking about for the next 15 or so minutes. I was introducing the fact that last night I had an extensive conversation with you. It was approximately an hour and a half. And you succeeded admirably in opening up my mind to the fact that there is an old new war on Haredism, on Erliche Yidden. In the time of the Chazal, they were called Perushim. Today they're called Haredim. And the people who oppose them are called, in the time of Hanukkah, they were called Misyavnim. Those are Jewish people who were trying to push the Yevani, the Greek agenda on Klal Yisrael. And they're referred to, I believe, in Al-Hanisim as Zaydim. The Zaydim are not the Rishoyim. They're not the outside forces, but the Zaydim are the inner forces. And the inner forces, were the most dangerous of all. Now, I want to just give me one more minute to set up the table, and then we're going to ask you a lot of questions and you can enlighten our audience. I have a brother who's a big Talmud Chacham, Rebbe Elia in Eretz Yisrael. I speak to him often. I spoke to him today. I didn't speak about this subject. He's the father of many children, girls and boys. And he called over his daughters and he asked them over the phone, did you ever see a problem in Beis Yaakov? Anybody in your 700 or 1,000 girl Beis Yaakov, in all the years you're there in high school, did you ever hear of stories of a girl or her sister having a problem that they were forced to draft her? They put her into the Israeli army. She said there was one girl who didn't file the papers, but if you file the papers, you're okay. And that's what my brother said. My brother says, I don't know of anybody. My sons never had any problems. They don't know of anybody who had problems. And this is a bunch of radicals that went against most Gedolei Yisrael, because Shmuel Orbach was seemed to be a Zatzal. He seemed to be almost a Das Yochid in the yeshiva camp, And I'm not going to get into personalities of Gedolei Yisrael. Steinman was a Gadol Hador. He was handed the baton by Rev Eliashiv, who was handed the baton by Rav Shach. Bahadi Kivchi Drachmanu Lomeli, what Rev Steinman was thinking, to what extent, and what he felt, and if he was being fooled or not. By the way, I think that Rev Avigdor Miller was asked questions. Gedolei Yisrael, how come sometimes they give answers that are not tzimzach? So Rev Avigdor Miller says that it depends what information they're given. That means Gedolei Yisrael could and would and have a history in times of being misled. There's no question about it. There's no question about it. We on this program have made it amply clear that there's something that I've named the Rabbi Shera Zechroinu Levracha, a great askin, the Shera errant, mistaken, fallacious doctrine. Rabbi Shera didn't create this doctrine because he was chas v'shalom of Russia. He created it out of ignorance, that we have to play footsie with the politicians. We'll downplay the moral issues. It's not our business. Lami Yomru Hagoyim, we're not involved, and we have to fight in the 1960s and 70s to maintain the yeshiva system, etc., etc. Now, 50 years later, that's been proved false. Did Rav Moshe Feinstein agree with this? Absolutely not. So why did Rav Moshe say anything to him? Because Rav Moshe, I've explained all this in previous radio programs. Rav Moshe didn't know 3/4 of the stuff that was going on. And when I came to him through Rav Avigdor Miller and the Debretziner Rav and apprised him of the Geyach situation in a Shaila, he wrote back, not on Agudas Yisrael stationery, he wrote back, L'malis Ulam Kol Yemei hearing shall gay rights, L'kadesh Shem Shemayim, L'haris Goli L'cholo Amen, to Gentiles, She'am Hashem Soine Tiyeva. He didn't write it in Agudas stationery. He was the president of Aguda. It was a much bigger organization than Agudas HaRabbanim, which was a Klein Azach. The answer is, he knew Agudas HaRabbanim under him. In other words, he knew that this is going to be rain. And Aguda, he felt, for whatever the reason, I can only uptight what he might have felt, that this is not in the purview of Agudas Yisrael, this is Rein Hashkafa. So now with that introduction, I want to say that what I discovered yesterday from this gentleman is that there, for the last 5 or 6 years, slowly but surely, there has been a remarkable change in the status quo that existed from the time of Ben Gurion, with the Chazon Ish or whoever it was, that they would leave the Yidden alone in terms of going to the army, the B'nai Torah. This has changed. At that time, there were hundreds of people, maybe 1,000 people, whatever it was, and things have changed dramatically, and somehow it's below the radar. So can you tell us, when did this change and what's happening?
Rafa, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the introduction and the background and all the work that you do. I just wanted to give, before we start, want to give a little bit of a disclaimer. You mentioned different names of different Gedolim on different sides of political issues. I want to mention everything that I want to discuss tonight was not going to really touch on any of these
absolutely
opinions. No, it's not going to touch on the opinions of these Rabbanim, and I'll just tell you real simply. I just want to give a quick, maybe a 30-second analogy, and then I think everyone will understand where I'm headed. So let's pretend that you have 11. You live in Chicago, and you serve on the Hatzalah over there. You're on the Hatzalah. Let's pretend I live in Lakewood, and I call you up, and I say, I hear that in Chicago you're on Hatzalah. And you say, yes, I'm on Hatzalah. I'm very busy. And how often do you get calls? Well, how often? 7 days a week. Wow, 7 days a week? Shabbos also? Yes, Shabbos also. Shabbos? I heard a lot of rumors that on Shabbos there's a lot of Hatzalah members driving around in Chicago with their lights and sirens, and there's nobody sick. There's nothing going on.
Go ahead.
Right? So then you tell me, what do you mean? I just took 5 calls. One of them was a heart attack. One was a baby choking. Another kid needed stitches. Another one was a Rahman al-Islam. And you tell me there were 5 stories of Shabbos. What are you telling me, Bubba Mises, that I'm driving around on Shabbos for nothing, for nobody, because I want to be cool? Then listen, this is what everybody in Lakewood is saying, that in Chicago there's no stories of Shabbos. These guys are just driving around in their Shabbos clothing. They feel cool. So what would be your response after I repeated it like 2, 3 times, my accusation? What would be the proper response in your opinion?
I guess that the proper response is that there was pikuach nefesh and they had to do what they had to do.
No, but nobody was sick. Nothing. There's very few calls there, even during the week. On Shabbos, there was nothing going on there.
I didn't have the. I didn't.
Many Jews there. There was no calls this past Shabbos. Actually, the last year, I think there were 0 calls. 0.
Oh, so I hear this. So that's a tremendous problem.
So what would you answer me if you were on that solo there? You were there.
I don't know what I would be able to answer. I would be speechless. I mean, if I'm being Machal Shabbos and you're catching me.
No, but you have no way of defending yourself. How would you defend yourself?
I'm not sure. Let me hear what you have to say.
So, I just want to give what I wouldn't say. I wouldn't say, well, do you know Eliashib is the Gadol Adar? Do you know what Reb Scheinberg said about being Mechal Shabbos? Do you know what the Mishnah Berurah says, how important it is to be Mechal Shabbos? Do you know the Rambam says that only on the daily soul, not on the day goyim? That's the way you're supposed to be Mechal Shabbos with Pekuach Nefesh. Would that be the right answer?
Maybe.
In my opinion, I would say that's the wrong answer.
Okay.
The issue is, because I'm not accusing you of breaking the law, breaking halacha per se. I'm just saying that if there would be a case over there, somebody who needs help, then you're doing the right thing. I'm just saying that nobody got sick. Nobody was in a life-threatening situation. I'm arguing with the Metzias. So it's not going to help you to bring all the king's horses and all the king's men, all the Gedolim and all the Svarim. It's not going to help you. Because I'm not telling you that Pekuach Nefesh is not Deicha Shabbos. I'm telling you that nobody was sick on Shabbos in Chicago.
Okay, got you.
Right, so that's why in this conversation I want to stick to more things that have to do with facts and Metzias, because that has nothing to do with different sheetas. We know Klal Yisrael splintered into tens of parts, hundreds of parts, different sheetas, different hashkafas, halacha. Are you allowed to open up balakats on Shabbos? All these different things. These have to do with halacha, hashkafa, and of course elu va'elu. But here I want to talk only about facts. And about facts, nobody can argue it. And people could question, saying who says it's true. Fine, that we could debate. And I'm willing and able, and I want to, and I would like to discuss that. I just want to keep the conversation focused to the facts and not so much what he says, and who cares what people say. The main thing is the facts. Hey, either you believe me, you don't believe me, you want to look into yourself. So getting back to your question about what's going on with is there a draft, is there a problem with persecution in the Haredi sector with the Yeshiva Bachram and the girls? The answer is not obviously, but to me, yes. And I just want to say a personal story just from this week. There's a big organization in Israel called Igud B'nai Terah Sfardim, headed by a very chashuv Yidden. The last name of one of them is Tehila. The last name of another one of them is Kugel. These people are young. They're in the 29, 30. And there's a lot of volunteers, actually hundreds of volunteers in all different cities who give out information and help out. And basically their budget is about $1 million shekel a year just to hire lawyers to help Bachram, Sfardish Bachram, who want to learn in yeshiva. They're 18 years old, they're 17 years old, they're 19 years old, or they're even married, and they're getting problems. The army says that they're not yeshiva Bachram. They says that they're not full-time learners. Some of these people, one of them actually just became a dayan of Choshen Mishpat. He was fahered on the whole Choshen Mishpat, 3 volumes of Choshen Mishpat in Beit Shemesh. I have all the details. If anybody wants to, I'll give an email address if they want a copy of the smicha. But here we're talking about not necessarily people who are on the peripheria, that they call it. We're not talking about that's shvacha or middle. We're talking about just this past year, 1,000 cases, 1,000 cases. In the year before, another 1,000 cases. In the year before, 3 years ago, 1,000 cases. And 4 years ago, 1,000 cases. We're talking about 4 years, 4,000 cases that lawyers who charge top dollar. There's a firm, Menachem Stauber, V'Chavera, V'Shutzov. He's one of the top lawyers over there. And they're busy with 4,000 Bachrim in Yungalai, who the army, the IDF, the government claims that they're not yeshiva Bachrim. And obviously he goes to court, and it takes him about, not more than a few minutes sometimes. Sometimes it could drag that a little longer, but an average of a day or two, a hearing or two, and he proves it very easily that they're all yeshiva Bachrim. And usually a case that's so open shut, usually obviously we know that there was an agenda over here, because if it's so easily proven that he's yeshiva Bachrim, why are they giving problems in the first place? And the answer is anyone's guess is could be accurate over here, but I think it's because there's an agenda over here to try to get Bachram out of yeshiva. So now, if somebody were to respond to me, well, this Rav and this Gadol, whoa, we have to stop the conversation and have to go back. Why are we bringing in Gedolim over here? Why are we bringing Mishnah Berurah? If it's true that there's 4,000 cases, then we gotta sit on the streets. I don't know. We gotta turn over the world. We gotta do something about this. If it's not true, so he has to shut down these organizations who are taking people's money and just throwing it in the garbage. But that's the conversation. The conversation shouldn't be, oh, 1 second, I have a Rav of a shul. There's 500 families over there. He's a chashuv Rav. He probably would know something about this. Or why is he quiet? Or why does he say this? That's irrelevant. What's relevant now is the facts.
Reb Ploini, I appreciate very much what you're saying. I'm going to play a little devil's advocate over here.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this, I want to say to the Olam, this is going to be an ongoing discussion with us over the next several weeks in Yisrael Hashem on this program, because we only have around 6 or 7 minutes left. Unfortunately, time flies when you're having fun. So, but I want to explain. The average person 98% of Klal Yisrael, of Haredish people, when you go to them for tzedakah, when you go to them for a mitzvah, for something, they want to know what do the Gedolim of the Rabbanim hold. And this is unfortunately, unfortunately, it's so it's not unfortunate, but the unfortunate thing is that nobody wants to do anything or believe anything. And if they don't hear that the Gedolim coming out very strong and saying like Gewalt, if they're already coming into the Kerem and they're pulling out the saplings of Torah, so how could it be that the Gedolim aren't saying anything? So even though intellectually you're making an argument that this should supersede, this should be beyond, but to me,
right. So that's a very appropriate question. So just to address that question, so let's go back a year ago. Yud Beis Tammuz, Tavshin Ayin Ches. A year ago, there's a cemetery, Beis HaKvaros in Sanhedrin Merchevet in Yerushalayim. Chacham Ben Zion Abba Shul is buried there. His yard site is Yud Beis Tammuz, if I remember correctly. And they made a big asif over there. And over there, they cried out. The Eagles B'nai Torah Sfardim, this organization actually arranged it. And they got signatures of 70 Rabbanim and Rosh Hashivas, basically representing about 100 or 150,000 Sfardish people. We're talking about a mammoth, a slew of 70 Choshev Rabbanim, from running the gamut, from the left, the righties, and all these big killers. They have different everyone in between. Starting with Moshe Tzadka on the top, who's recognized by all Gedolei Yisrael, and he was considered the Bar Samcha from the Sfardish Gedolim of the last generation. And they signed this letter to say we have to cry out against these Azers, we have to fight against these Azers, we have to help out the organizations. Send the Rabbanim. And when it came down to it, Yud Beis Tammuz, there were only about 40 Rabbanim who signed and who showed up. And the story goes is that 30 of them were threatened, some of them with heavy-duty financial sanctions, because the officers of the political party, the Sfardish political party, Shas, they sent their politicians to terrorize, and some very, very chashuv Rabbanim back down. Half their budgets of the yeshivas were at stake. And this is what goes on. Anytime that there's something that gets politicized,
so let me jump in. Let me jump.
Party, then there's a lot of terrorism that goes on.
Let me jump in. What happens when 5 Erlicha people, some of your good Rabbanim, whatever it is, go over to Rav Shalom Cohen and Rav Badani, the 2 top Sfardish today, and tell them Herzachain. It's your people. What's going to be? And Taka go in there with secret video cameras, whatever it is, and pin them down.
So there actually was a recording of someone going to Shalom Cohen. It was played on the following line, 646-585-2946 in Ivrit. If anybody wants to call, 646-585-2946.
Let's say let's say the number very slow so people can write it down.
I hope they'll have an easy time finding it. You just have to press 8 because it's updated daily, and this was like last week or 2 weeks ago.
But it's tight to hear. But let's say the number because
they find it. But over there, they play out the recording, the transcript of the recording, and the ADIS of the people inside Shalom Cohen. And I'll just fast forward to the end of what happened over there. They both got thrown out on their head, physically. And Rav Shalom Cohen, the only question he was able to get out there before they dragged him out, Rav Shalom Cohen said, how can in my yeshiva have no problems? And they quickly said, well, they're afraid of the yeshiva, and then whatever, the conversation went downhill from there. I spoke to somebody else. I don't know if I'm allowed to say.
Don't say anything. You're even super. Don't say any names, please.
I have two Askanim. I have a number of my contact people. If you would like to get a hold of them, we could try to put you in touch. They themselves were witness that when they were in one of the Gedolei Yisrael of the Litvisha community, of Chaim Kanievsky, they got thrown down the steps. That was his words. I was thrown down the steps. Maybe he didn't mean thrown down the steps. Maybe he meant out the door and ushered down the steps. But his words were, I was thrown down the steps when I started talking about it. Another person, this I could say his name because he says it publicly. His name is Shmuel Aaron Weiss. He's an Advarna Chassid from Bnei Brak. He came with a video into Rebel Pravarsky's house in Panovich 2 years ago, and he showed him videos and documentation of all the Bachrim suffering in prisons across Israel and being drafted. And Rebel Pravarsky was sitting there. He's one elderly Rosh Hashiva, very respected. And he was sitting there in shock, and then all of a sudden, 2 guys come in, they start screaming at him very loudly. It's a 14-minute video, and basically, they picked him up, took him and his computer, and threw him out. Anytime any gadol somebody tries updating them and informing them, it's been going on for the last 5 or 6 years. There's a lot of screaming and violence, and it usually doesn't end nicely.
First of all, we're in the final 2 minutes of this program, but I want you to give the number of the hotline very, very slowly so that people could write it down. The The one, the 646 that you said that people could.
That's in Ivrit. It's in Ivrit. You have to press 8 a bunch of times. It was posted last week. You might have to go back.
All right, but first, it's kedai to give a hotline number for English, for Ivrit, that people who want to learn more, they could start listening to these hotlines.
Anybody who likes Yiddish better, there's one that updates daily with all this information. The Yiddish one is, that's maybe easier for most of your listeners. Yiddish
just 1 second. Just 1 second. Just 1 second.
646-585-2957. That's the Yiddish hotline. Called Kol Za'aka. They have about 20 updates a day about all what's going on, all this information we spoke about. It's in Yiddish.
Just say that number again.
2957. You press 1 and they have all the information right there. That's the Yiddish one. And the Ivrit one is 646-585-2946. 646-585-2946. And the English one, we opened up an English one over here, and that is 585-3056. It's called Lamed Al Nafshenu. 646-585-3056. And over there, there's updates daily about all information with documentation. Anybody who wants emailed, we also have an email address that has all the information. We have a secretary, and the email address is the letter M 425-549-123 at gmail.com. That's M, the letter M as in Mike, 425-549-123 at gmail.com. Any documentation, anyone wants recordings of any of this information I said, or signed queries, anything you want, you can get from this email to show you any of these files or any of this information. It's all documented.
Okay, in Yirtzeh Hashem, we're out of time, but I thank you very much. And this is just the opening salvo. This is going to be the new front, and we have to reveal this. And next week in Yirtzeh Hashem, I want to discuss the hashkafa of how in this world, with this instant communication, there's videos, it's a global village now, and yet still this is so much under the radar. And it's not only having to do with the army, it's having to do with jobs, with academia. There is a conscious effort to de-Haredize the Perushim, the Haredi community, and it's up to each and every one of us to become knowledgeable and to stop it. Until we meet again next week, this is Yehuda Levin, a Guten Tamid. Just give me a second, please.
הקלטתם בהצלחה את קובץ מספר